Hi, everyone, and welcome to our block party event. I'm Ashley Jones, and I'm going to be your educator for the next 90 minutes, sharing with you some tips and tricks for piecing your blocks in the hoop. So that's what block party is all about. We're going to talk about creating quilt blocks in the hoop, but we've got some projects we're going to share with you too. So if you maybe have some block designs that you've been looking for ideas to create projects with, we're going to give you some of those ideas, but maybe you have some orphan quilt blocks that you've pieced on your sewing machine. They would also be great for this project. But piecing in the hoop, it is a in the hoop project, and it is all done in your embroidery hoop. I love this method because I can get perfect points every single time with very little effort. I can trim my pieces ahead of time if I want, or I can trim in the hoop like applique. So piecing in the hoop is a lot of fun. Now, I bet nearly all of you guys out there love In the Hoop projects because you are here because of our host today, and that is Reen Wilcoxon from Embroidery Gardens. So let's welcome Reen onto the screen.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Reen. How are you?
Good. I'm
Good.
excited about today.
I bet you are, because I was going to say you are the queen of In the Hoop, and this is piecing in the hoop. So exciting. And I bet all of your fans and followers are going to love this method.
I did a little project and I found it to be so easy, so quick, and so much fun. I think it's going to be like my newest addiction.
Right. Well, especially since you already love In the Hoop, but I agree with you. It's really nice. I love to embroider much more than I love to sew, even though I can. So anything that I can make my embroidery machine do, I love it. And I know that you feel the same way, which is why you've created a ton of In the Hoop projects over the years, right?
Right. Yeah, I just love it. And to be able now to do quilt blocks in the hoop and get that precision piecing and have all your points and corners match up.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Right? You definitely can't beat it. So I love that. So speaking of In the Hoop designs, what's going on at Embroidery Gardens, Reen? So do you have any new designs that are coming out or have recently been released?
Well, I've done quite a few little bee designs. Bees seem to be very popular. I've done some coasters, a little hanging, some mug rugs and things. And I just released a very popular, it was a class exclusive design, actually. It's a notebook cover that everyone really loves.
Oh, very cool. I bet, because I still love Reen to take notes on paper. So I've always got some sort of notebook near me. So I need to make a notebook cover. So I will have a cute little notebook that's not just plain. So I love that idea. What about classes, Reen? So are you still, I know you do a lot of classes virtually. So your fans and followers can take advantage of those from all over the world pretty much. So do you have classes coming or some that are available now?
I'm going to have a 2-day event. There's going to be some other educators there. It's a virtual, I'm going to be virtual for Mall Queens in Arizona. And I'm going to be taking over Sewing Machine Plus's social media page one day. These things are being scheduled. I've recently recorded a podcast with Sulky of America that'll be out later this year. So I've got, some things going on behind the scenes too.
That is fantastic. Sound like you're one busy lady.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a nice lounge in the pool kind of summer, but
not this summer. So, but that's fantastic. So sometimes it's good to be busy and then, kind of makes things go by quickly. That's for sure, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, sounds good. Well, if you're ready, I think we will get started. Are you going to head over to the chat, Reen?
Yeah, I'll be over there.
Okay, sounds great. So if you want to head over there, and I want to introduce one more person before we go that you guys will also see over in the chat, and that's Tammy Madden. So if Tammy will join us onto the screen now too, we can introduce her. Hey, Tammy, I'm so glad to have you here with me. I don't get to see you very much, so I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here, and we have a huge group already over in the chat. I think Reen has somebody from every state. I'm going to make you wait until our next talk to let you know what countries we have people from because they're still rolling in.
That is awesome. I love that. So, and I'm honestly not surprised, Tammy, because I know Reen has a huge following because he has some amazing designs and does ton of classes to engage her fans and followers. So I don't blame them. I probably would have seeked her out from all over the world if I didn't already know who she was. So
That's
that's
right. She has
awesome.
some amazing, I love her work as well. And this is just
Totally.
right up her alley in the hoop. So
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And she's what got me interested in the hoop years ago. So she's definitely an inspirational person. So, guys, Tammy will be over there in the chat with you for the entire event, and she'll be answering your questions. She has a ton of years of experience with embroidery. And so she is also very knowledgeable about all of our dime products, clearly, since she works with us. And so she'll be over there answering your questions, but we will answer some of your questions live. So ask them as they come to you. So I'll be seeing you roughly about every 30 minutes, right, Tammy?
that's right. And please ask your questions. We love having you ask questions, and just let me know what your favorite dime product is as well.
Ooh, yeah, I love that. I definitely agree. We love answering questions. So sometimes this can take on a life of its own just from the questions that we answer. So, well, fantastic. Well, if you're ready, Tammy, I think I'll get this block party started, and you can head over to the chat if you want.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much for your help. I'll see you in a bit. So welcome again, everyone. If you just joined in, I'm Ashley from Dime. We are hosting this event with Embroidery Gardens. Reen Wilcoxon is in the house. You'll see her over there in the chat too. And as you guys know, she's the queen of In the Hoop projects. And that's what we're talking about today with these blocks. Now, certainly I've got some projects for you that you could do with orphan blocks or maybe blocks that you've created from design that you already own. But we're going to be talking about how we create these blocks in the hoop and give you some tips and tricks along the way. Now, creating blocks in the hoop is a lot of fun. If you love to embroider more than you love to sew, this is a really great way to create some awesome blocks. Look at this strip of blocks just accenting one side of this placemat. Here we've got a block that was pieced in the hoop that was turned into this little case that holds this little tic-tac-toe board and pieces. So how cool is that, right? There's so many things you can do with your individual blocks. So strip of blocks through a sweatshirt. Look at that tiny little block that is the purse pull, that zipper pull on the purse, pin cushions, little wallets, so many things you can do. Ornaments. I love those two ornaments and that card. So if you're thinking about the holidays, you can do so much. Now we're going to show you today how we create our blocks for in the hoop piecing, and our method, we can actually resize them to any size that we want. You are limited by your hoop size, obviously, but we can go down to 1-inch blocks. So if you've always wanted to make some really tiny miniature quilt blocks, but it's kind of hard under the machine to hold everything in place, then the embroidery machine is the way to go. But we're also going to talk about some projects that you can actually create with your blocks. So if you've got designs that you've pieced in the hoop already, or another design set that you want to do the piecing in the hoop, you can use some of these projects to create with those blocks. But with our program, we're going to be talking about, we can create run stitch quilt blocks. So look at that cute little bag. Isn't that adorable? And here's just a couple of other things we've done. Turned a quilt block into a pillow that has a pocket, and also that cute little eyeglass case. And I'm going to talk to you about how that was created. So today we're talking about piecing in the hoop. We're going to share with you some quick projects that you can make with your in the hoop blocks. Or like I said, maybe you've got orphan quilt blocks that you might want to use these for. We're going to show you how to generate stitch files for any block in any size. And the nice thing about this process is you can trim in the hoop or you can pre-cut. If you do not like to cut your quilt block pieces, then you can trim in the hoop with this method, which makes getting started really easy. So today's event is a shop and learn event. That means that we've got specially priced items for you, but you can also learn from what we are talking about today. I've got tips, tricks. I've got, you have the ability to rewatch this for the next 48 hours if you feel like you've missed something. So certainly make sure that you rewatch. Use your same link for that. Now, if you see anything that I'm working with that looks like it would be helpful to you or make your life a little easier, then certainly you can take advantage of that at a special price. If you click the View Product button underneath the presentation, you'll see a description of the item, and then you can add to cart by clicking the Add to Cart button. When you add it to your cart, you'll see the cart pop out from the right-hand side of your screen, which then allows you to review what you've added to your cart, but also click that checkout button. So when you're ready to check out and you click that button, you'll see a separate page open up, and you want to make sure to click that Show Order Summary before you complete the checkout process. The Show Order Summary shows you the items that are in your cart one more time, but it also reveals the location to enter a discount code. Now, everything we're talking about today is on special, so you're going to get that discount by adding it to the cart. But your additional discount code is going to get you free shipping to any U.S. address. So that's free shipping with the free ship code Hatchling. So you'll see that scrolling across the bottom of the presentation several times, and I'll try to remember to mention it. And I know that Tammy puts it in the chat numerous times throughout the presentation. So that ship code gets you free shipping to any U.S. address. Now, I want to start by sharing with you our free gift. And now that I'm seeing this, Reen had stitched a very cute little block and put 4 of these together with this free gift. And I meant to ask her to hold it up, and I completely forgot. But this free gift to you is a in the hoop quilt block that you can piece, and the instructions actually give you the details on how to turn it into a little coaster, so you've got a finished project in the hoop. So to get this design, it is 0 cost to you. So you're going to scroll down to the bottom of the product list, and you can add that to your cart. Now, just to make sure that you know how to get it, watch for an email. This is a download item. So once you check out, watch for an email, and they will send instructions for how to download your free design. So if you've never stitched in the hoop, or even if you have and you like this cute little block, make sure to get your free design. So now let's gather our supplies and see exactly how we are going to stitch this block. Now, piecing in the hoop is super easy, and it gives you a nice quilt block with perfect points. So you're going to start with a piece of stabilizer and hoop that stabilizer. Since we're just using the stabilizer, I do recommend your standard hoop. So this is a no-show stabilizer, which I'll describe to you a little bit later, but you can actually use other types. And then you're going to stitch the first part of the design, which is the placement guide for your entire block. It even stitches the numbers. And so after it's done stitching, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to place the first piece of fabric down right sides up. The first fabric is always right sides up. And then every fabric after that, you're going to place right sides together. It will stitch a seam, and then you will open that up and it'll tack that down. Then you're going to do the same thing, right sides together. It'll stitch the seam, and then you will press that, finger press that, and flip that out, and then it will tack that down for you. And so you just continue that entire process until your entire block is completed. So right sides together, seam, and it will tack that down. So each time I flip this out, what I do is I put a little washable glue in that opening so that when I flip that out, it holds it in place while my machine tacks it down. So just a really easy way to piece your quilt blocks. Now look how gorgeous that is. Now that is the complete block that was done there. Now we turned it into a little coaster and finished the back by cutting 2 rectangles of fabric, folding them in half, wrong sides together so you make a finished edge, and then you actually overlap them like an envelope back. Stitch the last placement line there, and then you can turn your little coaster inside out through that opening. Now, we turn this into a coaster, but you can certainly create many other things out of this quilt block. And I'm going to show you where they come from, but before I do, let's head over and see some more inspiration here. I've got some samples I want to share with you and show you some of the things that we're going to see how to make today. So here I've got a few different things. So I've got a trivet that I pieced in the hoop. You can see the diamond block, and I even quilted it in the hoop before adding the backing. Now for this backing, take a look at this. Instead of an overlapping strip here, I actually cut 4 pieces of fabric, folded them in half. You can see each one is finished. And then I place them down, kind of like, in a manner that each one is overlapping. And so this is open. It's just a nice way to turn that block inside out. You can see my batting in there that I placed behind my block after I pieced it to get a nice quilted look. So this is a beautiful reversible placemat. So, or sorry, trivet. So it's not quite big enough to be a placemat. But here I made a matching border for my tea towel. I love the cobalt fabric, so it reminds me of my grandmother. For some reason, she always had those cobalt dishes. And I actually pieced these in the hoop. It's actually a strip of 3 blocks, and I attached them with my sewing machine, and I'll show you a little more details about how that was done. Now we're going to be using our My Block Piecer software, and My Block Piecer is the software that we use to create all these blocks. And My Block Piecer has the ability to save to cut file formats. So I actually created this this is actually an adhesive quilt block where I just cut it out of my adhesive fabric. So let me move it over out of the glare so maybe you could see it there. So that's adhesive vinyl I cut with my digital cutter because we can save to cutter formats. And I just put it on top of this little box and I put some of my sewing notions in there. But I also have the ability to take any of those blocks and turn them into run stitches. So I did that to decorate this cute little bag to carry to a class with some of my quilt supplies. And then look at this cute little thing here. So this bag, this is heat transfer vinyl that I stitched or I cut my quilt block out of and fused it onto my little bag here. But then I used an embroidery quilting design to stipple over top of that. So it looks like a little stipple block. And I used a variegated thread there that we're going to talk about a little bit later. The same variegated thread I actually used to quilt the back of this cute little eyeglass clutch frame. So this eyeglass clutch is an item that we have below the presentation on special. It has a pattern in there that you can use to put this together with just your sewing machine. You actually don't even need embroidery for this. But what I did was I took it a step further and I brought that pattern into my embroidery software and I created a block that I could piece and put right on the front of that bag there. So instead of just a solid piece of fabric, I have a pieced block and I even added a monogram you can see there from one of our fonts and just quilted the back in that variegated thread. So just a few things that you can do there. And here's our free coaster block here. Really fun to stitch out with that envelope back. Remember, you'll just turn it inside out. But now I also used that same block and made a little pin cushion. Look at that. How cute. So I just stuffed it with a polyfill so that I could have my little pin cushion there. I'm going to show you how to make this quilt block a little bit later, or this quilt label. So this block is a built-in block. You can see it's a little different than our tulip here. It is on point, and I've got this one as a full diamond. But I added this piece here. It was all done in the hoop, and I actually stitched a fusible stabilizer on the front and then cut an opening. You can see there that slit, turned it inside out, and so it perfectly turned my edges under. And since this is a fusible stabilizer, when I put this on the back of my quilt, so something like this, of course it'll be a bigger quilt, I can iron that down and it'll hold it in place while I'm stitching it to the back of my quilt. So I'll show you how to make that a little bit later. And then this cute little pocket here, I did a half of a quilt block. So this block is a heart, and I did a half to make the little pocket piece here. And then this cute little pinwheel. All this was done in the hoop except for the binding and the little rick-rack there. But this was actually created in 2 parts, sandwiched and quilted all in the hoop. So look at that. So you can really do a ton of different stuff with your quilt blocks all done on your embroidery machine. And we're going to see how to make quite a few of these today. And the last one, and probably the most simple, but yet one of my favorite, is this cute little board here. I actually made these into magnets. So these are 1.5 inch finished block. Look how small those are in relation to my hand there. And I made these 5 little miniature blocks, and they were so simple, guys. I didn't even finish them. You can see I have a cut decorative edge. I have a rotary cutter that makes kind of a similar to a pinked edge, and so I just trimmed those for that decorative edge there. So how cute is that? All of those done in the hoop, and we're going to see how you can make several of these things throughout the next 90 minutes. So let's head over. So I'm going to be using my block piecer, so I'm going to head over there and show you how to create these blocks. And like I said, maybe you already have some blocks that you have stitched in the past in the hoop, or maybe you have some orphan quilt blocks that you might want to use these projects in these projects. So my block piecer is a software program. It's how Dime gets all of their in the hoop blocks, because you can choose any block that you want to piece in the hoop and then convert it to stitches really simply with just a few clicks. Making quilt blocks in the hoop, as we already said, your embroidery machine is a that's a digital file that we're stitching. So those points are going to be perfect no matter how good you are at quilting. That design is always the same. And if you don't cut perfectly, it's still going to be pieced perfectly. I love that. So you can create traditional blocks. You can even use this particular program to print actual templates, and you could piece them on your sewing machine if you want. This program allows you to resize, and you don't have to do any calculations, don't have to do any graph paper to resize a block smaller or larger. And it automatically converts blocks to cutting files. So you can easily cut these pieces on a digital cutter, or if you guys have a cutter that uses dies, you can use that, or even a printed template. And I'll show you all that as we go. But this program, just so you know, it does work on Windows and Mac, and Dime actually gives you free updates. So if we add any new features, you get those for free, and it saves to all of your major stitch formats. So let's head over and take a look how it works, and then we'll talk about how some of those projects were created. So now I'm over in my block piecer. That's the program that we're in. This is a standalone program. You don't need any other Dime software for it to work. And to use this is extremely simple. Just 3 simple steps to make any block and in the hoop quilt block. So first, you're going to choose the block from the library. So we have an extensive library. There are over 1,200 built-in blocks. And as I click through some of them, if it's empty like that, that means that it's blocks that can't be pieced in the hoop, and they actually belong to another program that we have. But take a look at all of these options. So we've got tons of different blocks that you can piece in the hoop. And I absolutely love the foundation category is some of my favorites. So baskets, boats, flowers. We've got geese blocks, hearts, log cabins, so which we all love a log cabin, right? And then some traditional piece, trees, twist. I mean, just so many different things that you can do in the hoop there. So more log cabin blocks here, more geese blocks, 9 patch. I mean, there's just so many. I seriously couldn't go through all of them in one time today. So what you're going to do, step number 1, is to choose the block that you want to piece in the hoop. I'm going to go very basic because I want you to understand the process. So you select the block, and now set the size. So right here, it says size, and you can choose if you want it to be one of these preset sizes. If you need it to be a custom size, you can choose that as well. And so I'm going to just go to a 6x6 and click OK. So choose the block, set the size. And then the third thing, all you have to do is click this workflow here, and that actually converts it to stitches. So it brings it up. It asks what hoop you're going to be in. Now you do have to make sure to allow for that seam allowance. So I chose a 6x6 block. So, and if you choose an 8x8, you can't choose the 8x8 hoop because you need that 1/2 inch for that quarter 1/4 inch seam all the way around. So you can see here that it tells me the seam size, margin, between the pieces, the seam allowance for the, that I do want the seam allowance, the offset for the right sides together, the right sides opposite. So choose your settings, click the auto build option, and then you're going to click sort numbers. That's just going to make sure to put them in order for which way they're going to be stitched. And then when you click preview, take a look at this. So just that easy, guys, it created a stitch file for this exact block. So super easy. All you have to do now is save this to the format for your embroidery machine. If you click right here on the save type, you can see we save to all of your home embroidery machine formats. We even have commercial formats. So if we've got anybody out there that has a commercial machine, we saved those as well. And then you can also see here that I've got digital cutter formats, SVG, and we can also do FCM as well. And I'll show you that in just a bit. But you'd save that, and then this is the file that you're going to take to your embroidery machine. You're going to place that first fabric there, second fabric, third fabric, fourth, fifth. Your block is all done. So I love that. Now you can also change colors and change sizes here. So just to change the colors, if you want to audition fabric options, you can too, but let's add some different colors. So usually I'll change based on a color that I want to work with. So let's do maybe a blue and a green, and then click OK. And so you can audition that. You can also audition fabric. We have a fabric library here. Now this library has just some kind of basic things so that you could play around with them if you wanted. And these fabrics, you can download if you have a, whoops, I clicked the wrong button there. If you have a favorite designer, you could download, if you go to their website, you can download their little thumbnails or their swatches, depending on which they're called. And so you can find that and download those different fabrics there. But it's easy to just choose some colors, audition to see what you are going to want to do in your block. So let's choose one more here and see what that looks like. So cute, right? And of course, if you don't like it, you can certainly put that back or either choose different fabrics. But now you can also resize these blocks even after you get it on the screen. This was a 6-inch block. If I head over here, I've got 6 by 6. I could make that any size that I want it to be. So I'm going to copy it and paste it so we can see a couple of different ways that we can resize. So I'm going to say copy and paste and then move this one over. And then let's make this one a 4-inch block. And you can see that it does all the work for me. And you're not limited, well, you are limited how small you go. If it goes too small, you won't be able to get the pieces that small. But I can tell you that I have successfully done a 1-inch finished block in the hoop. So, and I'll show you that later. And you guys did see my little magnets. Those were 1.5-inch finished blocks. But now you don't just have to resize in a square. So let me show you this. So you can actually resize unproportionately. So if you wanted to do like the towel border, for instance, I did a 6 1/4 towel size or block size for my border. And so you can see now I've got that nice little diamond. Now that's the nice thing about resizing all of these blocks. They can be resized to anything you want. So even when you are putting them from square to rectangle, it does all of the work and all of the math for you. So then now what I'm going to do here is for my towel border. So if I flip this around, and actually, I'm going to use my rotate because it'll do it with a perfect 45 and then a 90 there. So for the towel, what I did was I created my design with my workflow, and I actually added an additional run stitch after I converted that to an in the hoop file. I created a run stitch just by drawing a run stitch here at the end to stitch my pieces together. And I'll show you that in just a bit. So I then copied and pasted those blocks and stitched 3 of them. So that's how simple it is to create in the hoop blocks. But let me show you something else before I go here. We're going to see that towel under the camera again and how we pieced it all together. But let's look at some of these different blocks here. I love star blocks. So not only do I love them pieced, but this is the block that you saw on my tote bag. So what I did to make a run stitch block is I actually removed the background color here and left these pieces of the block. And I'm going to change the white color just so we can see it a little bit better here. And selected everything and just clicked one time to turn that into a run stitch. Look at that. So that is now a run stitch embroidery design that all I have to do is file, save as, and take that to my embroidery machine. So it seriously is that simple, guys. I did add some text from our luxury font collection that we'll be talking about a little bit later. Now, we're almost ready for a Q&A, but let me show you some things here under my camera before we go to the Q&A. So make sure you're asking if you have any questions. So here I've got some other blocks just to give you an example here. You can see that I've got a larger square block. So this block here is a 7-inch finished block. And then we've got a 5-inch and a 2-inch finished block here. And then take a look, totally different block. Made into a rectangle gives you this really cool rectangular block that would be awesome for a border if you want. So that's a built-in block called Hazy Daisy. So that is in the blocks in the library. And then just some others to show you. So this cute little tulip block here is, our daffodil block here is actually built in, all pieced in the hoop. So, and this was actually pieced on a tearaway stabilizer, which we'll talk about in a bit. And I've got some other ones, cute little pinwheel done in the hoop. This geese chase block here in the hoop, log cabin, a diamond and a square. This one turned into a little trivet. And look at the size of these little tulips here. I've got some really great resized blocks. So this block here, guys, that is a 1-inch finished block pieced in the hoop. So now look how tiny that block is. So you can see that little bitty piece in the center there would be so challenging to hold together if you were piecing with your sewing machine. But in the hoop, you just place that piece down and it is stitched down by your embroidery machine. I love that. So really easy to do. So our My Block Piecer is how those were created. And so let me show you how I stitched that little towel border there. So the towel border was super simple. I stitched 3 blocks and then I joined them in the hoop by doing that run stitch that I just showed you. So the last block, the middle block, I actually used my PAL light. You can see it sitting off to the side there. It gave me that crosshair intersection, allowed me to perfectly line up my seams, and then I put my hoop back in the embroidery machine and ran that run stitch that I drew right there at the end. And then flip that out. You can see that's a perfect match. And then I did the same thing on the other end, and that PAL light, which is a laser light, helped me line up that that perfect point with the next block. So I stitched all my 3 blocks in the hoop, and then I had the embroidery machine assemble the strip for me. And then I just stitched it on with my embroidery machine. Now, what I did was I actually used a fusible no-show stabilizer. So the fusible part, I actually put down in my hoop. So when I stitch my block, the fusible side is on the back. So when I was ready to stitch this on my towel, I was able to fuse it with my iron and it held it in place while I did my stitching. And for the trivet, that was super easy, just pieced in the hoop. I added backing or batting to the back, and I used the Pebble Passion quilt design to quilt it. These are designs that are for embroidery. They're already saved in all of your machine formats, and it is a download design collection below the presentation. These are gorgeous, stitched in variegated thread, as you can see in a couple of examples there, but those pebbles give you a lot of different options for your quilting. Now, if you're wondering about how you're going to learn your MyBlock Piecer, we have free education for you. So Dime has a ton of ways that you can learn your software. The first and foremost, if you hover over any of the icons in the software, you can see this little message pop out, and it says press F2 for video. So if you press the F2, or you might have to do function F2 on your keyboard, it'll play a short little video here. And that video is going to show you exactly how to use that that icon. So, I mean, it seriously could not be any more simple. Now, other free education options at inspiredbydime.com. If you click on support and community forum, you'll see these list of icons. So the first 4 there to the left are free to you. We have a Facebook group that's actually monitored by Dime staff and our education team, so you can get good answers over there. Plus, we have a ton of knowledgeable users, so check that out. YouTube videos, Eileen's blog has software tips and tricks on there, and also our inspiration forum where you can ask questions. Now, the last option here is paid. That is our embroidery PDF software success lessons. Those are PDF tutorials that you can purchase. And we also have 30-minute private tutoring sessions that you can purchase to learn any of your Dime software. Now, lucky for you guys today, with the MyBlock Piecer software, you're actually going to get 3 PDF tutorials and a 30-minute private tutoring session that is all done over Zoom. And this entire bundle, guys, for $3.99 is all download. So I know Tammy said we have some viewers that are not in the US. So this is a download bundle, so you don't have to worry about any shipping whatsoever. So add that to your cart, watch for an email, and it'll tell you how to take advantage of your new MyBlock Piecer. The good thing is, you can start playing before the weekend even starts because it comes right to your email. I love that. So now, before we go on, let's see if we have any questions or comments. So Tammy, how's it going over there in the chat?
It is going great over here in the chat. Good. You know, Reen brought, I think, somebody from each state here in the United States, but she's international today. We have Australia, awesome. Belgium, wow. Canada, Netherlands, and Poland.
Oh my goodness, that is fantastic. Welcome everyone. That is so great. And from all of our lovelies here in the US too. So welcome.
Yeah, we have a great crowd over here today. Now, I just want to give you a couple comments first before we hit our question. Gwen says that the hooping station is her favorite. She uses it every day.
Yay! I'm going to show a picture of that in a bit. So if somebody doesn't know what the hooping station is, I'll show them.
Yeah, she says it helps her get the hooping done fast.
Ooh, I like that. And if we can hoop fast, Tammy, we can get to the fun part even faster, right?
That's right. Now, you asked for people to give you questions, and they have hit you up with questions, which we love. Susan wants to know, is there an Ohio Star in the software? And I know there is, like, I counted 8 real quick. I didn't count them all.
Right. Yeah, there are several different ones, variations of the Ohio Star, but yes, you are correct, Tammy. There are several Ohio Star options in the software.
And Judy says your Hazy Daisy long block. Yeah. Did you stretch it, or is that in the software that way?
No, so it's actually in the software as a square block. So all of the blocks actually are in the software square. Mm-hmm. And then instead of entering a 6x6 or an 8x8, this actually is I think it's a 12x5 or something like that. So you just enter the measurements that are unproportional to make your diamond or your block a rectangle.
Right.
Good question.
We got Cheryl over here. She wants to know, will the software automatic put in she says, for example, if you do a 6-inch in the software, does it make it a 6.5 to allow for the seam allowance?
It sure does. Another great question. When you put in a measurement, that should be what you want your finished block size to be. So if you want a 6-inch finished block, put that number in, and then the software does all of the calculating. It automatically does a 1/4-inch seam allowance, but that is adjustable. And in fact, on my towel, Tammy, I made it a 1/2-inch seam allowance because I wanted to be easy to turn under to top stitch onto my towel, but it's automatically a 1/4, but you certainly can change that. For those 1-inch blocks, I actually did drop it down to a 0.15 because otherwise the seam allowance is bigger than the block.
Yeah. And this kind of brings us into Susan's question. She's wanting to, the same question with the cutter. Does she need to add that 1/4 inch seam allowance for her cutting, or does it automatically do it?
Yeah, it automatically does that. And actually, Tammy, when we go back, I'll actually show that. I meant to show that in the last time we were in there to go into the cutter, and I just forgot. But I will make sure to show that, because I'm going to show how to create that label, because you have to add an extra piece for the quilt label. Right. So I'll show that, and then I'll show how to do that, create that cut file. But then I'm also going to go in there. I've got one other thing I was going to show in there too. And that was how to create the block that I did for the little eyeglass case. So I'm going to show them how to create that too. So I've got several more times I'm going to go into the software and show different things. So I can show the cutter when I go back in there how to get those cut files.
And one of our guest stars, she says that she loves that eyeglass case. It is so pretty.
Oh, thank you. I agree with you, Star. And actually, I love the piecing, but that back of that quilting design was just such a perfect match. So that turned out adorable. Nice little evening clutch if you want. Yeah. Thank you.
Actually, I'm going to give you one more question, and then I'll answer the rest of them when I head back in the chat. Okay. But we get this asked quite a bit on our software. Lynn wants to know, can you design a custom block?
Oh, yes, you actually can. So I'm actually going to show how to add the piece to the label, which is, to me, considered a custom block, because the software does recognize that extra piece and it actually pieces it in for you. But you can actually manipulate the blocks that are in there by removing parts or pieces. If you want to draw your own block, you absolutely can do that too. You can bring in an image of a block and trace right over it. So there's tons of different ways to create a custom block. The thing that everybody has to remember, Tammy, is that you can't piece Y seams. So if we were to stitch a Y, we can't then flip it over in the hoop to get it to stitch down. So you can't piece a Y, but what the software does automatically is, if there is such a case, it will break it up into like 2 hoopings that you might have to stitch together. And this Hazy Daisy block was one of those examples. So I was able to stitch the top half and the bottom half, and then you can see there, I actually seamed them together on my sewing machine. But the software will seam them together for you in the hoop too. It'll make a multi-hooping block. The PDF tutorials that come with the software today, for purchasing the software from Reen's event, doesn't have to be today, through the weekend. That one of those PDFs actually talks about that, a block that might require more than 1 hooping.
Great tips, Ashley. Well, I know there's a lot more you're going to show us, so I will let you get back to it, and I'll answer some of the other questions here over in the chat.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it. So keep those questions coming. We love to answer them. Tammy and I will get together again in just a bit and do another Q&A. So let's talk about the stabilizer that I stitched on. And then I'm going to show you, I give you some tips under the camera. So there's several different options that I think are my favorite choices. So the first one is Dime's Piece and Stitch Stabilizer. This stabilizer was actually developed specifically for piecing in the hoop. It is a tearaway stabilizer that has a wash away component. And when I say that, it just gets softer as you wash. It's not going to, get gummy or sticky. So don't think of it as your 100% dissolvable stabilizer. This just gets much softer. But because it's tearaway, you actually can remove it out of your block if you want. So that's the piece and stitch. Now I use each of these in different situations, and I'll tell you that in just a bit. The other option is a no-show stabilizer. So no-show is a cutaway stabilizer that is sheer, as you can see in the image there. And we have both a fusible one and a light no-show that we use. The fusible one I used on the back of my towel border so that I could hold it in place temporarily while I stitched it down. I also put that one on my quilt labels, and I'll show you that in just a bit. But the fusible no-show, that's available also below the presentation. That's a cutaway stabilizer. So the cutaways are going to stay in your block. Think of that as like foundation piecing, where we used to piece, or not used to, still do. Foundation piecing is done on like a light muslin, and that muslin stays in the quilt block. So same kind of thought process here. And we also have our no-show light. That is a ultra lightweight cutaway stabilizer that just you wouldn't even notice was in your block. So those are your options that we use for piecing in the hoop. Now, the cutaway versus the tearaway, I might piece on the tearaway for something that I want to remove the stabilizer easily. And I would probably use the cutaway for something that's going to remain in my block. Think foundation piecing for those cutaways. So let me show you under my camera to give you some tips here, and then we'll talk about that little bag there and the hooping station. So here, let's go through the steps so I can give you some tips. So when you stitch your placement guide, so of course this would be in your hoop, but I've got 5 step outs here, so I didn't have that many hoops to leave them in, but this would be in your hoop. You would stitch your placement guide, and you can see that we've got numbers for where to place our block. So number 1, you always place this down right sides up, just like that. Okay. And so once you do that, the embroidery machine is going to tack this down. That's your next stitch. Now, to hold this in place, what I normally do is use a washable glue stick. My favorite is like my Soline glue stick pin. You can also use a washable glue stick that's like a that you can get like in your regular store, your like Elmer's or something. Put that down and then place that, and that'll hold it in place while it stitches it down. It's not going to gum up your needle. Now, here's a tip. Now, look at my pieces here. These pieces look like they are the same, but they definitely are different because they're mirror image. So one tip that I can give you is before you start to put your block down is to put your pieces in order of how they're going to stitch out. So you can see that, you know, we know they're going to be like this, but now I can see I already have a problem. So by placing them down in this manner before I get to my hoop, it's actually going to save you a lot of time. So I could see that I had those 2 pieces in the wrong spot, but you can see that these are mirror image. So when you just pick up one, it definitely could get confusing. Okay. So you'll stitch this, you'll place number 1 with a little glue, stick it down or stitch it down. And then when we're ready for number 2, grab your number 2 piece. You're going to put that right sides together. Now, this line right here is the edge of this block with the seam allowance and everything. So you want to make sure that these dog-eared pieces, let me slide this one out of the way. You can see how these dog-eared pieces fit perfectly in that shape. Okay, so make sure that you've got those fitted correctly. And that means that when you place this down perfectly, just like that, and the next step, your machine is going to stitch that seam, and then you're going to flip that out and finger press it, or you can use another method. If you want to use like the folding pin, I would be careful on the folding pin not to wet your stabilizer if you're using the tearaway. A seam roller works great, or like I said, finger press, fingernail works great, or maybe you've got like a point turner or something that's just a hard edge that you can push against that. But all of those will give you a crisp seam. Put a little bit of that washable glue there so that when you push this out, it's going to hold it in place while the embroidery machine tacks down that outside line. You can see how it does that tack down stitch. And then you're going to put this next one would be right side together, and the same thing, flip that out and then stitch it down. Now, if you don't get it perfect, you can see here that I've got a little gap at the top, but don't worry about that because since it's a digital file, look at this. I still have my perfect 1/4 inch all the way around. And when I stitch this together with another block, even though I'm short my 1/4 inch here, I can just follow along that line. It's going to give me a perfect stitch out. So isn't that awesome? And so, and talking about the different stabilizers, so let me show you a couple of differences here. So I actually washed this block. So this is 4 6-inch blocks that I put together for a 12-inch block. And I washed it, and this was my piece and stitch. And you can see how the large pieces just came right out. And so, and I'm not going to worry about picking this out of the seam because it is still very, very soft. Okay. So that is an option for the piecing for the stabilizer there. Now, another tip that I can give you on the back of here, the main reason that all of this didn't come out because it's actually stitched in that placement line that we stitch first because we stitch that placement line like this, and every line that's stitched on top of it is stitching into this stabilizer. So one thing you could do so that you can easily get that out is actually stitch your placement mark with no thread. Look at this. You can see this is the same. I have thread in my needle here. Here, I removed my thread and I turned off my thread sensor on my machine. So if you have the ability to turn off your thread sensor, you can just do this and you can see it'll just basically make the dots on the stabilizer, and I can still use that to place down my pieces just like that. So then it's less thread that I'm using. And like I said, then you don't have all those stitched lines in the back there. So just another little tip for you. Okay, so now let's talk about this bag. So you saw that I created the run stitch. And so basically all you have to do once you create that design is stitch it on your item. So there's really not much to tell about this other than a trick for hooping, and that is our totally tubular hooping station. So here we're using our centering ruler for finding the center between our handles there to make sure that we're in the perfect place. And we printed a template on our print and stick target paper. That is going to stick in place because it has an adhesive on one side. And then I can place this on the edge of my totally tubular hooping station and slide that bag right over. Now, the totally tubular hooping station is open underneath. I'll show you a picture. So the excess part of your bag hangs down. Now look here with our snap hoop monster. So she's all lined up with the PAL 2. That's the laser light that I used to line up my pieces a few minutes ago. And then the magnet just snaps into place and holds that bag so that you can get that on your embroidery machine really easily. So if you're using a flatbed machine, which she is here because of that attachment, I can tell, make sure you turn that inside out. So it's really that easy. Head to your embroidery machine, do the stitching. So now in that segment, we use the embroidery toolkit. This is a set of tools to help you with centering and placement. You saw we use that centering ruler to find the center between the straps there. The print and stick target paper. This is a target template paper. You can print on your regular printer the design and use that for a placement aid. You can audition your designs with this. I love this paper. It feeds in your regular printer, and then you peel the release paper off of the back. So that light that she was using and that you saw me get mine lined up, that is the PAL 2 light. That light, I use the PAL 1. She was using PAL 2. They do the same thing, only one's larger than the other. But this crosshair light actually can help you get things perfectly straight in the hoop and centered. You can see in the little picture there, we've got it lined up with our hoop, and we can easily get our item right in the center. Now, the totally tubular hooping station was the other item in there. And take a look at this. This is actually a double platform hooping station. It has 2 different sizes of a platform. They all come in the box together, but it makes hooping tubular items really easy. Look how that baby bodysuit there hangs down underneath that platform so that you don't risk grabbing it in the back of your hoop. So one side is an 8x13 platform with a non-slip mat, and the other side is a 13x13 with a non-slip mat. Now, this totally tubular hooping station actually works with your standard hoops or your magnetic hoops. Any hoop that you're working with, you can use the totally tubular hooping station. So take a look. Here's another example. You can see how it's open underneath. It's attached with that post. You place your hoop on the edge there, and that non-slip mat's going to keep it from sliding around. We've got our shirt marked with our target sticker here where we want to land our embroidery, and then you just dress the shirt over the board so that the excess is hanging underneath. That way, when you put your top frame into place, you don't risk grabbing the back of your shirt. So I love that. So that's the Totally Tubular hooping station. You can also get a set of wool press mats that are perfect for your Totally Tubular hooping station. They're already cut the right size, and it turns your hooping station into an ironing station. So I love that. So I also use these pads to the right of my machine if I just need to iron as I'm doing some sewing. So they are perfect for that. They're a 1/2 inch thick and 100% wool. Okay, so I think I have time for this before we go to our next break. So we've got our next break coming up. If you have questions, then let me know, and we're going to get to a Q&A in just a bit. But if you love the idea of piecing in the hoop, but you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want Block Piecer to piece all those blocks, but I definitely want to give it a try. Well, this is a project kit for you. If we've got any kit lovers out there, and if you want to give block piecing a try, this is the perfect place to get started. So this kit gives you everything that you need to piece these so cute little miniature quilts. So these actually sit on a stand that you could have in your entryway of the different seasons. So all 4 seasons come in the kit, and these are so much fun to make. So you get the spring kit, and in each of these, you have piecing in the hoop, you have some embroidery and quilting in every one of these. You get the summer adorable boat there, those summer glasses as well, the fall, and also the winter. So all 4 of those seasons you get in the mini quilt kit. So let me show you how this works. So you get a panel that has all of your fabric on one panel. So you can see here on this summer panel, we've got the fabric for the sailboat. We've got a fabric for the water, for the sky, for the backing even, and for the sashing. You'll cut out your pieces with the included template. And now look at this. This actually answers one of the questions that we were talking about is if the cutter cuts with the seam allowance. Now you can see in each one of those little images, it has a little extra 1/4 inch all the way around because it does include that seam allowance. So you'll cut out your pieces for your block, and then you will piece them together. Now the instructions have you piecing on a piece of batting so that when you quilt this, your batting is already in place. So you do that entire piecing process, just like we've shown with the other block examples. And it pieces your boat and the water and the sky all in one. Look how gorgeous. And those clouds are printed on your fabric, and so is the water, the waves there. Then you're going to stitch the top part, which is the sunglasses, and the scene, which is the sunset or maybe the sunrise, whichever you like. And once you've done that, you're going to sash those 3 pieces together. So you add the sashing to the pieced block, add the top, and then you're going to add the scene to the left, and then you'll add the top sashing and add the sunglasses at the top there. So now you've got a finished little mini quilt. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make the curve to fit the stand. So in this kit, it gives you a template that you can follow along on your sewing machine. Whoop. I'm sorry, click too quickly. Follow along with your sewing machine there to make that perfect arc that fits over the stand that comes in the quilt kit. And as you're doing this, you are also piecing the backing on to your little mini quilt kit. You'll trim away the excess, turn it inside out, and look how adorable that is. So isn't that super cute? It comes with all of the designs that you need. It has all of the instructions, printable templates for cutting out all your pieces, and all of your machine formats. 6 by 10 is the hoop size requirement. So in the mini quilt kit, you get all 4 panels. So you get the winter, the spring, the summer and the fall panel. So that gives you all the fabrics that you need for your mini quilt kit. You get all of the designs, and you can see each one: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Each one has some embroidery. It has the quilting, and you will piece those blocks in the hoop as well. You are also going to get all the thread that you need. There are 23 spools of thread, 1 spool of variegated thread. So actually a 24 total, 23 solid embroidery colors, 1 variegated embroidery color. That's the red, white, and blue around the glasses there. And you are also going to get a package of our print and stick target paper to print your templates. You get the light no-show stabilizer, which is what we recommend for starting. You also are going to get fabric stabilizer. This is a spray-in stabilizer. It does not take the place of the stabilizer you put in the hoop. What this does for you is it makes your pieces nice and crisp. So when you fold to make that seam, you're going to get a nice crisp seam. That's another really good tip for getting crisp seams in the hoop. And you get the metal stand that your little mini quilt sits on. So even if you were thinking, wow, that's a lot to do, but it does give you all of the supplies, a full roll of stabilizer, as well as a full package of the print and stick target paper, the Sullivan spray, all of that thread. They're all full sizes. So $129.99 for that entire kit. So make sure you add that below if that looks like something you'd like to do. And it's all included. That kit, guys, you don't need My Block Piecer. Everything is included, the designs and everything. So you can do that without any additional software or program on your computer. So now let's talk about cutting the pieces, because this is actually a really good transition from that kit, because you do have to cut your block pieces for that kit as well. So cutting your quilt block pieces is really easy. You have multiple ways that you can do it. So you can actually skip the cutting if you like. So look at this image here. We are piecing in the hoop, and we've used a large piece of fabric. And when it does that tack down, you can actually just trim away the excess, just like we do with applique. So if cutting is not your favorite thing, then you can skip it. You can also cut with your digital cutter. So I'll show you that over in the software when we head over there, how to generate those digital cut files. So if you have a digital cutting machine, you can actually save those file formats from My Block Piecer and cut out your pieces. Now make sure you prep your fabric, unless you've got a rotary blade on your digital cutter. We use this Sullivan spray to prep our fabric. So this is a little bit heavier than starch, and I'll actually show you what it does here under the camera. I've got a sample that I've treated, but it actually makes my fabric rigid enough that I can cut it with my digital cutter, but it also makes it really nice when I flip my piece out. Because it's crisp, it makes a very crisp seam in the hoop. So this spray to me is one of the keys to success with stitching in the hoop for that perfect block. So that's available below the presentation as well. If you have a die cutter that uses the dies for quilt blocks cutting, you can use that and cut your quilt block pieces and stitch them in the hoop. So what you want to do is you're going to select the same quilt die that you select the block in My Block Piecer, so that you've got the right sizes. Make sure that the die size also matches the size that you enter into My Block Piecer. You're going to enter the finished block size, and that's going to match your finished die size. So make sure you put that in. You can cut your pieces with your die cutter and piece those, and I'll show you an example of that. Also, you can stack up fabric if you want in your hoop and actually stitch your placement line. Eileen actually gives you the instructions for how to do this in one of the PDFs that comes with the software today. So you stack up your fabric, stitch that line, and then cut right on it. And she recommends increasing your seam allowance to a 0.3 to make this work perfectly. Now you can also print a template from the software, and by printing a template, that allows you to cut out your pieces with your scissors or your rotary cutter. So there's really so many different ways that you could cut. So when you print, it already includes your seam allowance, so you cut right along the line. And this is actually another easy way to fussy cut your pieces. Now when you're cutting your pieces for piecing in the hoop, try to stay cross or straight of grain because that's your least amount of stretch. But honestly, sometimes the fabric print actually takes precedence over our cutting direction. So if you have a one directional print, or if you're having stripes that you're trying to get to be a certain direction, then you're going to cut your fabric based on your print for your block. So then it might actually be on the bias in that case. If you cut, especially on the bias, I would definitely treat with that Sullivan spray. It's going to make sure that you don't stretch your fabric whenever you're flipping it out and doing that excess there. Okay, so that's a ton of different cutting options. And so let me show you one more thing before we go. So we're about to do our Q&A, but let me show you the cutting stuff under my camera here. So here, this is not for cutting, but every single block that you create, you get a PDF that shows you the block. It shows you the stitch file, and then it actually gives you instructions for piecing together. It tells me step number 1 or color number 1 is my placement stitch. Then I'm going to stitch the next color with the fabric right side up, and then every one after that is going to be right sides together. And then you're going to flip it out and finger press it, and it'll stitch that tack down stitch. So right side together, tacking stitch. So every block you get personalized instructions, and I'll show you that too when I head back over there. So now cutting, you can print a template. You can see here, this template actually includes the seam allowance, and they are numbered. You can see that this is my piece number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so I can place that down on a stack of fabric. I have 2 pieces here, but you certainly could put more pieces together. Cut with your rotary cutter or your scissors to get your templates cut. So that's one way. Also, look at this. This actually, let me move down here. So these pieces were cut with my my die cutter. That's not a digital cutter. That's a cutter that takes a die. I send that die through and it cut the pieces. And look at that. This was actually pieced in the hoop with those exact pieces. A perfect cut. And you can see the back, so you can tell I pieced that in the hoop there. Okay, so you can use your digital cutter. Now this fabric here is actually prepped with the Sullivans. So this green has no fabric stabilizer or starch or anything. So you can see how it feels. Now adding that Sullivan spray, now look at it as I hold this up. This is very much like a piece of paper at this point. It's much more rigid. So then whenever I cut this with my digital cutter, I don't have to iron anything on the back. And this spray actually washes out. So it becomes soft after you launder if your item is something that's going to be washed. So that's treated with that fabric spray. So, let's now let's take a look, or let's see if there are any questions and comments that we need to address. So Tammy, how's it going over there?
It is going great, Ashley. You know, you mentioned kits and I got distracted. I forgot I was supposed to be working over the chat.
I know. I love a kit, Tammy, because then I can get right to playing. I don't have to collect all the items.
I know. And, you know, Sharon over here, one of our guests, she likes the kit too, but she's limited to her 5x7 hoop. So she was wanting to know, do you think she can work it out and sew it on her regular sewing machine?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it does give you all the pieces. So like for the boat, for instance. So the boat, it gives you all the templates. So when you cut out all those pieces, you could assemble those on your sewing machine. The scene, the only thing that you wouldn't, well, actually you could, she could free motion quilt on her machine. And then the applique, like around the sunglasses, you could do that on your sewing machine. Absolutely. So yeah, now that I think about it, good point. You could do that, all on your sewing machine.
So she's not limited by her 5x7 hoop. I mean, it's going to take a little bit more extra work, but she can get it done.
That's right. Absolutely. If you want to make it, there's always a way, right? If there's a will, there's a way.
That's why I was thinking, you know, my brain was working thinking, oh, I think I could work that out. I have to try it.
Right.
Well, we do have a couple comments. Agnes says, the software looks amazing. I'm so happy to be here today. Greetings from Poland.
Oh, good. Welcome from Poland.
Yes. Now we have a couple of guests that have asked this question. So I just wanted to come on live so that, you know, our viewers who are watching over the weekend, if they have this question, we can answer it for them as well. We get this a lot. They want to know, can you download the block piecer to the tool shed, or do I need the basic program?
No, you don't need anything else to make block piecer work. So the program is standalone, and when you install it, it actually is a download file that you will install. And so when you install it, it actually installs the embroidery tool shed automatically. If you don't have the embroidery tool shed, that's just the place that all of our dime software is housed. But if you already have Embroidery Tool Shed, maybe you downloaded the free version, or if you have another piece of dime software, you actually don't have to download anything new. When you get your serial number in the email, to the bottom right-hand corner, you'll have a little shopping cart icon. If you find Block Piecer in that list, and then click on that options button right to the right of the name of the software, and you can choose activate. And then you just enter your serial number, and it just activates all those features. So if you already have Embroidery Tool Shed, that's all you have to do. So simple.
So simple.
Yeah.
And we just had Kimberly ask a question over here in the chat. How many computers can the block maker software be installed on?
You can put it on 2 at any time. That can be a PC and a Mac. It could be 2 Macs. It could be a PC, laptop, and a desktop. Any 2 computers you can put it on.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
And Nancy has a question. She's not sure how the AccuQuilt works because it's not a digital.
That's correct, Nancy. So Nancy, your AccuQuilt, if that's what you have, has usually a die that tells you it's a half square triangle, quarter square triangle, or whatever. And it shows you a little picture somewhere of the blocks that you can make with that die. So what you would do is whatever block that you choose, like the block that I actually stitched out, it actually took 2 of my dies. And so I was actually looking for it. So I had to use 2 different dies. But what I did was I located this block in my AccuQuilt little pictures that it says that I can make. And it said I needed die number 3 and 5. I don't remember if that's the exact number. So I got out those dies, 3 and 5. And my die, for this particular example, it made a 2-inch finished block. So I selected the same block in my block piecer that I selected my dies for. And I put into Block Piecer that it was a 2-inch block that I was going to be making because that's what size my dies were for. I saved the design to go to my embroidery machine, but I didn't have to do any saving for the cut files for this block. All I did was cut these pieces out with my AccuQuilt, and then it took them to my embroidery machine, the digital file, stitched it out, and then used these pieces in this place. So yeah, it's really that simple. There's so many options.
Thanks, Ashley, for explaining that to us.
Yeah.
And Sharon, our last question. Sharon has a question. She wants to know, I'm sorry, when using the hooping station, is it just for the magnetic hoop, or can she use her regular hoop?
No, that's actually another great question. You can actually use it with any hoop. So it's good for sticky hoop, for your standard hoops, our magnetic hoops, even other hoops that other companies make. Anything that you have to use for a tubular item, no matter the hoop that you're putting it in, you just sit that hoop right on top. So yeah, any hoop, not just our hoops or your standard hoops. It can be other hoops as well.
Very universal. Well,
yeah.
Ashley, I know you're going to show us some more great things, so I'm going to let you get back to the presentation.
All right. Well, sounds good. Let's do it. So, guys, we'll do one more Q&A before we go. So make sure that if you've got questions that you do continue to put them in the chat. I love answering those questions. So let's go right over into my block piecer again and show you how to create that little quilt label. So this is so simple. You're not going to believe this. And I'll show you the cutter and the PDF that you get for this one too. So let's first go. Remember, step number 1 is to select your block. And so for this one, I used a little flower block that was in here. And so I'm going to choose my flower, this one here. And I did, change the color, but we won't worry about that. You can do that, right? And so the second thing you want to do is choose the size. Now, notice the first time I did this for you, I chose the size from down here. And so the size, I don't have the size I want here. So I went ahead and said, okay, and I didn't pick a size. But even though I didn't pick a size, I can still change it over here. I need this to be a 3-inch finished block. So 3 by 3, click apply. It automatically resizes it. And now what we need is a little place to the right to put the text of our label. So remember we talked about you could edit and create your own block. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. So I've got my block. Now what I want to do is I want to draw a rectangle. And so I just choose my drawing tools and choose rectangle. And I start at that top corner, drag it down and then over, making sure that I'm the right height there. And then I now have created that extended part there for my label. Now, I may have gotten that a little too long, but that's okay. We can certainly adjust that. And if you didn't get it right the first time, you certainly can adjust, you know, here in your, after you've created it. But then now we've got that extra little piece there that will be for our text. Okay, so, and I'll fill that so you can see what I mean. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, this is actually, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. It's actually over 8 inches long, and I don't want my my whole label that long. So then now I'm going to select everything on the screen and then click that workflow. Remember, that's how we turn it into a embroidery file. So then I click auto build, and then when I click preview, look what it does. So now earlier you saw my diamond was very simple, but look, this is definitely a much more intricate block, and it's creating all of the pieces that I need. And then I'm going to save this. So let's go through the save and the cutting process so you can see that here. So I'm just going to go to and save this on my desktop, and I'm going to call this our test tulip. And then choose my machine format. That's very important. You see how we've got all these formats. So you do have to choose your machine format, or it's going to save to CS2, which your machine won't recognize. So I'm going to choose my format and click save. And then what it does is it actually saves 3 different things for you. So it saves, I'm going to make this larger here. And because I have Perfect Stitch Viewer, I can see these this way, but I can see that it saved the stitch file in my machine format. It saved the artwork file. That's actually what you need for the cut files, and I'll show you that. And then it also gives me this PDF. So take a look at this PDF. These are customized instructions for your block. So remember, the one I showed you was for the diamond. So I'm actually going to make this fit to 1 page so we can see. So there's my block. It shows me the order, and here's the stitch file, and here are my instructions. And so now let me zoom in here so you can see. It is placement stitch, and you can see that this is not a generic shape. It's the actual shape of my label. And then it says number 1 goes right here, and you put it right sides up. Number 2, fabric is right sides together. It stitches the seam and it tacks it out. So it literally gives you personalized instructions for every single block that you make. Okay. Now for the cut file. So when you open up this artwork file, I'm going to open that up and then close out our workflow here. And you can see that it opens up. That looks just like the one that we created. So to create your cut file, select this entire block, and all you have to do is click this cutter option. And you can see here that I have all of my pieces for my tulip block. And you can see right outside the red, that's the seam allowance. And now notice if I change that, if you want more of a seam allowance and I do apply, you can see how that number got much, or that space got much bigger. But I just leave mine my 1/4 inch, and that's what I usually do for my pieces. And then when I click save, it's going to ask you for the format. Make sure you choose your format for your digital cutter. So we've got PLT, DXF, SVG, and FCM. You can save to any of those formats for your digital cutter. So you select the format, and when you click save, it's going to save each one of these so that you can take it to your cutter. And it is the shape with the seam allowance included. You do not have to change that at all. So if you don't have a digital cutter, you can print a paper template, because some of these are odd shapes. Like this particular part of our tulip, I don't have a ruler that cuts that shape. So what I would do is, instead of choosing like your cutting mat, if you choose paper and click save, it actually will save to a PDF so that you can print the template out. So if I click test here for my test tulip and click save, and I don't want to do the preview for this one. I'm going to put a number 1 behind it so it saves it different. So let's take a look at what it saves here. So when it opens up, we've got our PDF here. That is our cut file. So when I open this, you'll be able to see that. And let me bring this over to this screen. And you can see there, that's our cut files. It puts them on separate paper because it's different colors of fabric. Now, if you don't want it to be on separate pieces of paper to remind you that it's different color of fabric, you can just make everything the same color before you click the cut file. So like if we make this whole block this kind of blue before we click cut, you can see it puts everything on one page. So that's an option for you. And that's also works for your cutter as well. So really easy, right? So I love that. And now all you have to do is you save, after we did the workflow, we save that cut file. We take that to our embroidery machine, and you take the digital cut file to your digital cutter so that you can cut out your pieces or your paper template. And then let me show you my labels here that I have, just to kind of give you an idea of a couple of different things that you can do. So I'm going to go under my camera here. There we go. And so take a look at my label. So this is my label here we talked about in the beginning and that we just created. So here's my block, all pieced in the hoop. Whenever I flipped this large piece out, I added my text. This is actually micro text that stitches down to 3 millimeters small. We actually have this text for sale in a different kit. So I'll show you that in just a minute. It's an add-on to my block piecer. So that is micro fonts. But what I did was I stitched my block, stitched my text all in the hoop, and I actually drew a rectangle and turned it into run stitches so that it would stitch my stabilizer on my item so I could turn it inside out. So that's what I've done here. So let me show you. So this is my block I stitched in the hoop, okay? And I stitched my stabilizer to the right side so that I could turn this right side out to get those perfect turned under edges. And I did clip my corners, but I just put a hole in my stabilizer because this is actually going to be stitched down. Now I would use my point turner and get this all nice and poked out here. But because I used that stabilizer that's fusible, I can now fuse this down. It's going to hold it in place while I stitch this on. But look at this. This is actually a built-in block that was square that I actually made rectangular and added my text. So how cool is that? So, and then of course, like I said, you'll poke out your corners a little bit better and then iron that all flat. So because this is a fusible, make sure you iron this down on a non-stick pressing sheet while you're ironing so that you can get it off. So, right? Super cool, huh? I love that. So that is making a quilt label, but certainly, you know, that's just one idea. You can do so much more with that. But let me tell you about that small text. So miniature text is really, it's important to be digitized correctly. That's like one of the most important things. It's great for quilt labels, baby items, recipe towels, but these text will stitch down to 3 millimeters and to up to 6 millimeters, and they are still legible even at that 3 millimeter size. So the reason that is because they are digitized specifically to be that small. You cannot take your standard font and reduce it this tiny because you will have areas that give you issues with thread bulking up and breaking, and your text doesn't look as clear. It doesn't read as clear. So what happens is that when we have our standard fonts, there are overlapping areas that will get bulked up if you shrink them down really tiny. So our micro fonts have no overlapping areas so that you have a beautiful stitch out. So these fonts actually are a font collection that you can purchase for $179.99. It's available below the presentation. When you purchase this font collection and you install it inside of your embroidery tool shed with your block piecer, you can use these texts together with your blocks all in one place. That's the beauty of it. These actually install inside of Embroidery Tool Shed, so you don't even need my block piecer. So if you just like the idea of the micro fonts, you can have those as well. Now let's talk thread weights. So when you are piecing your block together, you're going to use a regular 40 weight thread. So that's, you can use your regular embroidery thread. You can use sewing thread if you'd like, because it's just run stitches. So piecing it together, use your regular 40 weight, but those micro fonts require a 60 weight thread. That's a thinner thread. It is imperative for those micro fonts because they're so tiny that our thicker 40 weight thread is too bulky for them. So you want to make sure that you're using the right weight. So 60 weight thread, you want to use that in the top and in the bobbin when you're stitching those micro fonts. Your piecing and your quilting and your embroidery is most often done with a 40 weight thread. So that's the difference. So we do have 60 weight thread on special. We've got our 15 pack, which is our fine line thread pack. These are polyester threads, 1,500 meters, 15 colors in that box. If you want to just try a smaller selection, we do have our quartets, which is 4 colors of the 60 weight thread for $14.36. So that's actually a really good way to get started with it if you're not sure. And we've got it kind of grouped in the color ways so that you can select the one that works best for you. And then the right needle, you want to make sure that you're using a 65 needle. So a 65 needle is much smaller because our text is so tiny. So use a smaller needle, and just remember that smaller needle, it probably won't work with the needle threader on your embroidery machine. So just be cautious about that. But we actually have 2 sharpnesses of embroidery needles. We have ball points, which are great for our knits. It doesn't pierce the fabric. And we have sharp point, which is what you want for your wovens, which is what we're doing for piecing our quilt labels and our quilting as well. So sharp point needles for your woven fabrics. So we do have our needle sampler pack below. If you're interested, 100 needles for $35.99. These are all sharp point embroidery needles, flat shank. So if you're using a flat shank needle now, these will work with your embroidery machine. Okay, so now let's go on to this eyeglass case. This is one of my favorite, and this is super quick, so I know I can fit this into this last 5 minutes. So let me head back over to the software and show you another thing that you can do. This is also going to help with some of the block editing. So now the eyeglass case actually comes with a pattern that you can download, and either you can cut the pattern out or you can embroider the pattern. So whichever you want. So let me go to my pattern. I'll show you what it looks like. So for the eyeglass case, here's our pattern. Okay. So now what I did for the one with the block is I actually ungrouped this and I removed the quilting, because I wanted my pieced block on one side and I wanted that decorative quilting on the other. So then I went to my library here and I chose the block. So in my geese blocks, I wanted this one here, but I didn't need the entire block. I just needed 1 row of those geese. So remember I said you could edit these blocks. So I can just remove those blocks and put that right in place. Now, before we've been choosing the size to a perfect size over here, but you don't even have to do that. Look how I can stretch this block to fit in my pattern. So how cool is that? And all I need to do here is send that to the back. And you can see how my pattern fits around it. Now, let me give you one more tip about the workflow. So I'm going to hide my pattern pieces here. And so that we can select just the block. And I'm going to show you something about the workflow. Now, when the computer orders this, it may not be in the order you like, even though it works. You do have control over the order in which this stitches. So I choose the reorder key, and then I just click on the blocks in the order that I want them pieced. And then I do a right mouse click, and it set that for me. And then let me hide my pieces again. And then I'm going to select this, and let's put this in the workflow so you can see that you get, look, it's too big for my hoop. Well, I have paper chosen. So let's go up here to my hoop size, and that's still too small there. There we go. And then when I click the auto build and the sort numbers and then the preview, boom, there is my design that goes to my embroidery machine to piece my block. If I want to cut these pieces out with my digital cutter or paper, I click the digital cutter option, and I can then save to my digital cutter by choosing my scan and cut and the FCM. I can then also choose paper and save to PDF. Okay, you'll take that and cut those out and piece that, and then cut your pattern piece out. So now let me show you one more thing on this. Let's grab that same pattern option here. And then I'll put my quilting in there. So I'm going to ungroup this again so that I can remove the quilting. And now the back side of this, I use the quilting from our Swirls and Paisley collection, and I did the same exact thing. Now notice how my block piecer, it's actually reading our embroidery designs too. So even though it's meant for piecing in the hoop, look at all this different stuff I'm doing with it. And I actually stitched that in a variegated thread, which our medley variegated is actually here in the exquisite palette. I can change to see what that's going to look like. I save this and I stitch this on fabric and then cut it out. So let me show you that. So I've stitched you can see the actual pattern and my quilting. I stitched this on a quilt cracker, we call it, because it's just the batting and the fabric. I'm then going to cut that out. And then my other side, I pieced it in the hoop. And I actually added border fabric so that my geese would be all centered. And I did that all in the software. And then I pieced this side, and then you're going to use your sewing machine to put it all together. So you've got a seam in here that turns it inside out, and you're going to glue the frame on. All the instructions are actually in the kit. So let me show you that. So for this project, I use the eyeglass case, the Swirls and Paisley quilting collection, and the variegated thread from the Color Play set. So the eyeglass frame is an actual project all by itself. It gives you the details for how to make that little bag, but I just use different options in the little kit there. This design collection was what I used for quilting. This design collection is already in all of the formats. It is downloadable. You don't have to have anything additional to make that work. So you could actually make that eyeglass case without the piecing with just this and that collection there right on your embroidery machine. Now I use the variegated thread, the Sunset, to do the quilting. It's either in the Rainbow Medley kit or the Color Play kit. Color Play is 5 spools of thread. It's 1 variegated with the 4 coordinating colors, and it's all embroidery thread that you can use for machine embroidery, quilting, or sewing. I use this collection, the Carlsbad collection, because it had that sunset in there. But there's actually 12 different options. So if you click the View Product button near the Color Play, you'll get a drop-down list that you can select from. And then the last thing I wanted to mention to you is the luxury font collection. So the monogram that I did in the center is from the luxury font collection. My block piecer only has 3 fonts in that program. So these other 2 font collections are ways that you can purchase fonts to add to your My Block piecer or to your embroidery tool shed. If you have other pieces of software, you might already have some text. But this luxury font is $99 for the presentation. It installs inside of your embroidery tool shed and gives you 25 different font options. Now, I know that last little bit went really quickly, but I was trying to squeeze it all in. So I will stop right there. But before we go, let's take a couple of extra minutes and answer any questions. So Tammy, how's it going over there in the chat?
It is going great over here in the chat.
Good.
You know, Nancy, she's the one who asked you earlier about the AccuQuilt.
Yeah.
And she's want to know, is the instructions that you had given her, is there a PDF? Are they mentioned in the PDF files?
They are. Yeah. One of the PDFs that comes with the software, if you're purchasing it from the event, it actually gives you all cutting options all in one of those PDFs. And it does talk about using the AccuQuilt and those steps that you should take.
Oh, that's great. And then Susan wants to know, is it possible to do the sashing in the hoop?
Yeah, so you would basically do it kind of like what I did with this. You can add an extra piece rectangle around your block and then have it piece on the sashing, or you could do it like I did the towel border, just add the run stitch. You put the piece of fabric, it stitches it, but then you take it out of the hoop and iron it flat, you know, outside the hoop. You're going to piece it to the other piece. So yeah, there's a couple of different options.
Well, that's great information. Actually, we have one more question. Karen wants to know, we keep talking about the embroidery tool shed. Can you explain that to her?
Yeah, for sure. So the embroidery tool shed is just a program that houses all of the dime software. And actually, I need to back up a step. So embroidery tool shed is a free software program that has some basic options for manipulating your embroidery designs. So that free embroidery tool shed can be downloaded. Tammy, I don't know if you put the link over there for them.
I have,
so,
yes.
Okay, perfect. So you can download it. It's a free embroidery design software that has a few different options that you can manipulate your design. Anytime you purchase a dime software or a dime font collection, it installs in that embroidery tool shed, just making it that much more powerful. So standalone, it works by itself as a free program, but anytime you buy any of our programs, they go in the shed so that all your tools are in one place and they actually all work together, which is really powerful.
Yes. And I like the fact that when you log into the tool shed, it lets you know if there's any updates, and it automatically updates all the programs that you have.
Yes, I agree. And that's for free too, Tammy, right? So we don't charge you when we add new features or, you know, make sure that we always work with the current version of Windows. If new stitch file formats come out, we add those as well. So, and yeah, all that's free to you. You never have to repurchase your software from us.
That's right. Well, Ashley, I think we have all of our questions answered. I want to thank you for having me today. It's been a blast hanging out with Rain's crowd over here. They were very active today, and I loved it. I'm glad to work with you. I usually don't get to see you on Fridays, but it has been a pleasure seeing you today.
Yes, and I so appreciate your help, Tammy. I couldn't have done it without you for sure. I appreciate you handling all those questions over there. And I want to say a big, big thank you to Rain for hosting this event and sharing all of her fans and followers with us for the last 90 minutes. So until we have another event with Dime and Embroidery Gardens, we're going to say thank you guys so much for watching and bye for now.